I was just relaxing here a little bit on the set. Welcome back to segment 3, Plane Time. Ben Coleman, your host, and this is going to be talking about aircraft maintenance primarily. But I have a subject here called Bob Jex that I'm going to be working Bob over pretty good. And the beauty part about this is you never know if Bob really doesn't understand what I'm trying to say or if he really gets it and he's just kind of playing ignorant about the subject matter. So, Bob, can you tell us a little bit more about the general, how's that for a segue to set you up?
I hope I don't disappoint.
I know you won't. Tell us about the General Aviation Joint Steering Committee for the maintenance items quarterly.
Sure.
What we come up with.
Sure. In the previous segment, we talked about the General Aviation Joint Steering Committee and their wonderful work to give us an operational set of 12 monthly topics for presentation at seminars or webinars. They've also covered a series of airworthiness topics for the fiscal year as well. 4 of them, what they call topics of the quarter. So the General Aviation's Joint Steering Committee has given us 4 topics of the quarter for fiscal 23, which began on October 1st, so we're well into the fiscal year. The first of these topics of the quarter for airworthiness is corrosion. Corrosion is getting emphasis because it is a hidden killer. It is insidious. It can take, it can form and take effect within an aircraft structure, and it may even be a section of the aircraft structure that's not even inspected on a regular basis or is not thought to be vulnerable to corrosion. You may remember a few years back there was a mishap involving one of the Grumman Mallards for Schalk's Airways. They would fly out to the Bahamas and they would land their seaplanes on salt water. And so the saltwater corrosion ate away at those airframes to the fact that one day one of the Schalk's aircraft disintegrated in flight when the wing came off, and it was found to be corrosion. It was an area of the airframe that was not normally inspected. Corrosion is getting a lot of emphasis because a lot of the general aviation fleet is getting older. The average GA aircraft is 35 years old. That means corrosion is going to be a problem in a lot of aircraft. Now, yes, composites are coming along, and some structures that corroded are being replaced, but there's a lot of areas that are not getting the attention they deserve. And so the GA Joint Steering Committee has given us the topic of the quarter as corrosion for the first quarter. Our second quarterly topic is aging aircraft. I just mentioned the GA fleet. It is very likely that your first aircraft, if you're an aircraft buyer, your first aircraft is not going to be a new aircraft, it's going to be a used aircraft. And it's very likely that if you're a young buyer, it could even be older than you are. Very, very likely it happens every day. There are some good tips to the sensible purchase of an aircraft that's aging, one of which is a pre-buy inspection. We cover a lot of this, just like the topics of the month, we cover these topics of the quarter, airworthiness topics of the quarter, with pre-made media. All you need to supply, if you're a FAASTeam volunteer leading one of these teams, all we need is a speaker. We'll give you the media, we'll give you the speaker's notes, and all you need is a projector and chairs.
Add water and
yeah,
stir.
basically it's almost a turnkey presentation. All we need is the speaker, and that speaker could be you, the FAASTeam volunteer. Our next topic of the quarter is first flight after maintenance, specifically major maintenance, where components have been taken off the aircraft, maybe repainted, maybe rebalanced, and hopefully they've been properly reattached to the aircraft after maintenance has taken place. But that is an area of huge risk, and there have been a number of accidents that have taken place when aircraft were not properly maintained in terms of reassembly and not properly pre-flighted after they came out of the shop. And so to prevent those accidents from happening, we have a specialized topic of the quarter called first flight after maintenance. And our final topic of the quarter is, I'm not quite sure why it made the list, quite honestly, but the GA Joint Steering Committee is a lot smarter than Bob Jex. Quarter turn fasteners. These are fasteners that that push in with under spring tension, and with a quarter turn on the screwdriver, they are supposed to lock in place. Sometimes these fasteners can look like they're locked in place, but they're not. And that is one of the caveats that they want to bring to your attention in this presentation called quarter turn fasteners.
I can enlighten you just a little bit on that, Bob. A lot of cowlings, primarily, are used with quick, what they call Zeus fasteners, but they're quarter turn. And if you don't make sure that they latch properly, and they wear, I mean, eventually they wear to the point where you can't really feel there's much of a locking action to the fastener. But if that happens, cowling pops off, goes back, whacks the tail, knocks it, for all practical purposes, off. What happens to the airplane when you lose the down force on the tail?
Well, that empennage is traditionally the weakest part of the aircraft structure, and so if something knocks the empennage off, or the horizontal stabilizer or the stabilator in Piper aircraft, you lose that tail down force, and the aircraft is immediately going to start on a nose down attitude.
It's going to pitch.
From which it might be able to recover, it might not be able to recover.
So the moral of the story is that it's bad when you have stuff fall off an airplane. That's not by design. So that's why this quarter turn fastener deal is, sometimes there's little marks, witness marks, that it's really easy to visually see that it's not. But even in that case, if it's worn to the point of being worn out, which is the airworthiness, the definition of airworthy, it meets its type design.
And is a condition for safe operation.
It meets its blueprint, and it's not worn out beyond limits. So worn out is not a good situation, but just lost my train of thought. But that happens from time to time.
Benji, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to turn the tables on you for just a second here.
Go.
What percentage of general aviation aircraft do you think are out there flying out of their type design, somehow in excess of their type design? They're in some condition that's not specified in the type certificate data sheet.
I have an answer for that. As a matter of fact, it's one that got me in trouble back when I was with the agency. But the answer is too many. But here's the fact of the matter, though. I used the term during the presentation that 99.8% of the aircraft flying over our head right now at this moment do not meet the definition of airworthy.
That's a scary number.
However, after the presentation, I got dressed down pretty good. Ben, you can't say that. We're the FAA. We can't make a statement like that and know that there's 99.8% of the aircraft that are unairworthy. And okay, all right, take a deep breath. I understand that we're the agency that we're in charge with the oversight of the regulatory enforcement. I got it. But I'm just talking about the overall reality. And you realize that if you take an airplane that is in absolutely perfect condition, that just came out of the factory, off the assembly line, and there's a placard that's required on the instrument panel. If one letter of that placard is either skewed, missed, left off, the aircraft does not meet its type design because one letter off of the placard. That's what I'm talking about. It's not that the wing's going to fall off, you got a loose tail, you got something fixed, a grenade in the engine. That's not the point. But the thing is, if you start settling for and accept that, it's just a letter off the placard, you're settling for mediocrity at that point. We're going for perfection here. If you don't strive for perfection, you will settle for mediocrity. And eventually, it will bite you in the behind. I cleaned that up because there's too many people watching and listening here. There might be some kids, but so that's the reason that it's so vitally important that we do a post-flight inspection. Here's something that a lot of folks may not realize, and I realize we're here talking to Bob Jex, but you can use this. Are you aware that when a mechanic finishes an inspection and they sign that I hereby certify that the aircraft has been inspected in accordance with umpty-ump, and it is approved for return to service. stamp it, put it in the logbook, here they go down the road. Well, the next poor, miserable, I'll clean this up, airman that comes up and, is the airplane ready? Yep, all ready. Just finished signing the logs. Cool, here's the keys, go have fun. The aircraft is not returned to service until that pilot takes the aircraft and lofts it off the ground for the first time after maintenance.
That doesn't make him a test pilot, does it?
In some regard, it does, but by letter of the definition, it does not, because the aircraft has been approved for return to service. So someone else has already verified that it has met its conformity of its type design. However, we're human, and humans, I'm sorry, if you think you're perfect, you're not. We make mistakes. And that's the reason that there's safeguards put in there. And again, remember what we mentioned in the first segment about be careful what you wish for? The FAA could, I tell you one way we could prevent every accident from ever happening. Put a big placard on the airplane, do not fly. Still, somebody's going to get hurt walking around the airplane. It could taxi around and taxi into something. Somebody's going to get hurt. But you will not have an aviation aerodynamic accident or incident if you don't ever fly the airplane. And if you're not careful, and we all are trying to be careful, and as a matter of fact, there is a situation, a 5-day grounding, that if a air carrier aircraft is grounded by that's really the only time the FAA can ground an airplane legally. It's called a 5-day grounding. It's because an airworthiness inspector, primarily airworthiness, if an ops person saw something, they would call an airworthiness person. I see a crack up there. Is that a crack, or is that just a smoking rivet? No, that's a crack. Yeah, this 737 needs to be grounded. As a matter of fact, this is the second time I've seen that. And I'm not picking on Boeing, but it would be a 5-day grounding of that aircraft. And every 737 in the fleet, I'm talking about the Boeing fleet, not just the airline fleet, the entire fleet would be on the ground for 5 days until the administrator or his or her representatives determine that it's an isolated condition or it's systemic. If it's systemic, remember the DC-10 lost an engine? American Airlines, 1978, Chicago, 5-day grounding. Every DC-10 in the world was put on the ground until they got their head around what caused that left engine to come and do a little pirouette around the wing.
And what they found was pretty amazing.
It was.
It was really forensic.
But it goes to show you it's all about procedures, using the right tool. If the tool ain't right, the dude ain't right, okay? You can use that one. You can take that one home. But there's so many things about aviation maintenance, Bob, that some of it is scary. It should not scare pilots, but it should have the respect of the pilot. And the person that turns that last quarter turn fastener, or the one that does button it up, because there's things underneath that either sheetrock or fabric or whatever it is that covers the airplane that you just never see from an operational standpoint. You hop in it, you crank it up, it works as advertised. That's the goal. Bob, are you familiar with the term dirty dozen?
I've heard of it when I was a student pilot, and it meant a list of 12 airports that you couldn't go to solo because they were way too busy for student pilots to come in there. That's the dirty dozen from an ops side. I'll bet you have a different dirty dozen.
As a matter of fact, I'm glad you asked, Bob. I'm gonna just so I don't. He's so smart. He really is. I'm going to pull this up, and you're going to just be amazed at. And I do this because I don't want to slight anyone. The first one of the 12 is lack of communication. If you have a lack of communication, you have introduced an opportunity to make a mistake in aviation maintenance. You got to communicate. Hand me that 3/4 fastener. 3/4 fastener. What do you mean 3/4 fastener? You mean quarter turn? Oh yeah, the quarter turn fastener. There's people that actually go out there and pick up, and this is a joke, of for the new mechanics that are on the flight line. They come up and say, and the old timers say, "Hey Smitty, give me that bucket of mag drops over there. I need a whole bucket, not just one or two. I need the whole bucket of mag drops." So we'll go over there and just look at, "Hey, Mr. Coleman asked me for a bucket of mag drops. Oh, they're around the corner there," because everybody's in on this. "How about a bucket of prop wash? I need a full bucket this time."
You know, in the Navy, it was the male buoy.
Not the female buoy? Communication is key. Complacency, it enters into maintenance just like it does in operations. Lack of knowledge. There's actually people that can attempt to do something that's beyond their knowledge pool, therefore they're traipsing around where they should not be. And in maintenance, you're never supposed to do something that you've never done before under supervision. That qualifies you. Basically, you're solo. And before you solo, you have got to have done it. I'm talking about even pulling a tire and doing a bearing check. And this applies to, do you know that pilots can do some of their own maintenance?
Part 43, yes sir.
However, they're held to the same standards as an A&P certified mechanic. And, a little side note. I got to stop this side note. FAA inspector, Orlando Flight Standards, Orlando, Herndon, Orlando Executive Airport, back when it was still Herndon. Riding around, doing our FAA thing. Just what a beautiful day. Nice to be on the payroll, civil servant. Can't touch me. I didn't say that, did I? Okay.
I didn't hear anything.
Okay. And I see an Aztec out on the ramp, and the cowlings are off on it. And I see a car beside the Aztec. And the trunk is up on the car, so this looks like an opportunity to insert myself. So go up to drive up, offer credentials. "Hi, I'm Ben Coleman for Orlando Flight Standards. Who are you?" "Oh, I own the aircraft." "Yeah. Oh, here's my driver's license. Here's my pilot's and my pilot's license." Says, "Oh, okay. I was doing a little bit of maintenance today." "Yeah, changing the plugs out on it. It was time." And I said, "Okay, cool. What kind of plugs are you going to put back into it?" "Well, the RHM 38s that the book calls for." I says, "Well, what book?" He went and got the maintenance manual out of his trunk. And he had a paper copy of the maintenance manual. And I said, "Okay, well, this is good. Not looking too good for me, because I thought I was going to catch him." So I said, "Well, is that the current version of the maintenance manual?" And he said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I called the factory and they told me that, yeah, this is the current revision. And right there, it matches. So it's current." "Okay, you're going to put the plugs in. How are you going to put the plugs back in?" He said, "Well, I've got the Champion manufacturer recommendations here, and they say I'm supposed to use this anti-seize compound. It shows me where to put it and how much." Okay, this guy's good, okay? I got to hand it to him. However, how tight are you going to put that plug in there? And he said, "Well, I've got a new gasket, and according to the specs here, I'm supposed to pull it down to about 50 foot-pounds. So I'm going to use my torque wrench." Says, "Okay, all right, that's good." He knows enough about torque wrench. When's the last time that torque wrench was calibrated? This is a sure, I got him this time. The torque wrench was only 6 months old. He had the receipt where he bought it, and he was within the 12 calendar month of the calibration of the torque wrench requirement. I said, "Well, sir, you, congratulations. You're doing a fine job. And as long as you make the proper entrance in the maintenance records of what you've done today, just be careful putting it together. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" So, "Well, no, you haven't really helped me out much so far, other than just held me up from finishing up my job." So, "Sorry, apologize, have a good day. If there's anything I can do, here's a business card. Call me anytime. You're doing a good job. True story. And but seldom does that happen, because you usually see them with the airplane jacked up, and you see the tire off, and they're out there and they're taking the bearing, and they just finished flushing it out with some mineral spirits, and they spinning the bearing just to make sure it spins real good. Never, ever spin a dry bearing. Never. What that does is cause turbostatic electricity, and eventually that bearing will fail. The bearing will fail if you spin a dry bearing. I rest. Let me get back to my dirty dozen. Have you? Are you enthralled?
With a maintenance ramp check war story, you bet.
And after the lack of knowledge, or appropriately, oh, thank you. Thank you, Vanna. We go on to distractions. Hang on, bear with me. Did I say we were live? This is live, you know that. Distractions. And again, this is a fatal accident. I won't give you the whole story, but the gentleman that was putting the exhaust back on the Turbo Lance, updraft cooling, had only put one side of the exhaust on and torqued it down. The other side was just laying in position, got distracted, went to lunch, came back, forgot where he was. The airplane had to go because they had a demo flight on it because it was for sale. Threw the cowling back on it, boom, they take off. In-flight fire. The one bank of the exhaust came off, and it literally was an in-flight fire. The only person that survived was the mechanic that was in the back. The two front seat occupants were deceased. But he was distracted, and he admitted that he did not recall torquing down the right side of the exhaust. Very, very tragic accident and in Tennessee. But nonetheless, distractions do happen in maintenance a lot more than they should. Lack of teamwork. When you're in a team environment, you got to have good teamwork. You just got to be able to back up each other. Fatigue. I've been working on the airplane for 12 hours. They want to fly this airplane tomorrow. It's got a trip scheduled at 8 a.m. I got to finish it up. I've just got to finish it up. The Air Force has an excellent movie out on this same subject, on fatigue, on maintenance on the C-130. Lack of resources. You just don't have the right stuff. You just don't have, you're not really prepared and set up to do it right. And that's caused a lot of accidents maintenance-wise. Pressure. Can you imagine that there's an owner of an operation that goes up to Bob Jex and says, Bob, if you don't have that airplane ready at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, we have a charter. It's got to go. No pressure, but it's got to go. And if the airplane don't go, there's something else here at this facility that will be going. You got what I mean, Bob? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? You got it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. You just
No pressure there.
That's a verbal commitment. You're going to finish up this inspection, and the airplane's going to be ready. Lack of assertiveness. Can you imagine? There's some folks that are mild and meek, so to the point where they're told or asked to do something, and they won't say that, I'm sorry, but I don't fully understand what you're talking about. New mechanics come out and they're told, go out and do a 100-hour on that airplane. All right, Captain, on it. And they go out to their buddy and say, what am I supposed to do? And I said, well, you're asking me? You're the one supposed to be doing it. I said, why don't you go back and ask the captain? Because I'm not going to ask him. You got to be assertive to a point of not being a jerk to be an effective mechanic. Stress. There's a lot of stress in me. I will personally tell you that I've gotten up at 2 in the morning, back when I was pulling a wrench for a living, at 2 in the morning, went back to the airport because I couldn't remember if I safetied that bolt, that one bolt on the main landing gear that I knew I had off. And I couldn't I just couldn't for the life of me. I had to go back. Had to get up, drive all the way back to the airport, turn on the lights, open up the hangar, get back into the airplane, and whew, all right, I did safety it. But a valuable lesson. You do that a couple times, and you remember what you are supposed to safety and not. Lack of awareness. Some people just don't read current publications. They don't stay current with what's going on in the industry. Much like on the operations side of the house, you got to stay up on what's going on. Your NOTAMs. We deal in the world of service bulletins, service letters, service instructions, SAIB, service safety airworthiness information bulletins.
SAFOs.
There's a whole bunch of stuff, and it's just you got to take time to stay up on what's going on. So that's where the lack of awareness, and then the last but not the least is the norm. It's a norm. We've always done it that way. Therefore, we will always do it this way. No, that's not good. That's one of the last of the dirty dozen that can bite you, and it causes a ripple effect. Because if a mechanic has a bad day, that means that somebody down the road in operations can have a bad day, and that means bear with me. That means that not only the mechanic and the pilot, but the families could have a bad day. And it's a very, very sobering experience when you lose somebody in an airplane.
Benji, I've lost people, friends, who had bad days. Mm-hmm. And it is an unfortunate side of the business, but you pick up and you move on, because you know that they wouldn't want you to stop flying because of it. They wouldn't want you to stop turning wrenches if you're a maintainer. They want you to keep going on. It is regrettable that the people sometimes pass away in this business. My great mentor and friend, Larry Enlow, passed away because of a bad maintenance action that I won't go into in this presentation, but I learned a lot from his example, his life, and I try to share that with other people. I've been honored to be here at this stage today to share some of my background and some of my my past and my present. It's a wonderful thing. We love to share what we do in teams. We have volunteers. We lead a team of about 120 volunteers. They're called FAASTeam Lead Reps, FAASTeam Reps, and FAASTeam Service Providers, who help us to carry this message out. Many of them are motivated to work with us because of a bad day that they either had or saw someone else have, something that to them was thought to be preventable, and they want to turn a negative into a positive. And we very much want to bring people like that on board.
And then you come up with the situation with Colonel Joe Kittinger. Here's a man that did many, many things that should have cost him his life, and it didn't, for a good reason. We had Colonel Joe for 94 years, but I understand he slipped the Surly bonds. Godspeed, Colonel Kittinger. He had the record for jumping out of the
102,800 feet was the record for many years.
Oh man, and he was very. Is it Ron Baumgartner?
Felix Baumgartner.
Felix, he helped Felix do his jump that took the new world record. So to Colonel Joe and his family, Godspeed. Bob, we're going to wrap this up. This is segment 3, and maintenance, operations, the FAA, it's so important to the industry. And I just encourage folks to go to FAASafety.gov and just learn what if you have never been there, you'll be amazed. If you have been there, stay up on it, because it changes from time to time.
It's a busy website, but it's an inviting website in the sense that we want you to go there, register for a free account. It doesn't cost anything to get started in FAASafety.gov. Pilot, aircraft mechanic, even the unmanned aircraft system, the UAS community, which is the fastest growing community within general aviation, they're invited to go there and learn. You can link to other sites and find resources that you might not have even known you needed to find those resources. You can link to many of those resources through FAASTeam.gov, not to be confused with FAA.gov, which is another FAA website. FAASafety.gov is the FAASTeam website and kind of like the center of my professional universe.
Bob, we've had such a good time. Why don't we do it again sometime?
I look forward to it, Ben. I really have enjoyed being here amongst these wonderful volunteers at the Florida Aviation Network and here on your stage, even if only for a few minutes, to share a little bit of your day and a little bit of everybody else's day. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
And I believe there's going to be a code at the end of this presentation.
There is.
That if you are so inclined.
Yep. That code will go up on the website, and if you would send us an email with that code on it, we will credit you for wings credit for today. Watch for the code. I think it'll be at the bottom of your screen or on a separate slide. And send us an email with that code, and we'll credit you for wings credit for today in very short order. So please do that, and you'll receive free wings credit. It's not a complete phase, must point that out. It's one of the bricks that builds the structure known as a wings phase.
Bob.
Thank you, Benji.
Commander Jex.
And all the best of the holiday season to you. A Merry Christmas to you and the entire crew of volunteers, and to all of my FAASTeam volunteers that work with me every day. Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
Very good. Thanks, Bob. And on behalf of the Florida Aviation Network, National Aviation Safety Foundation, I'm Ben Coleman, your host for Plane Time, and we will see you next interview.